Gotta stop him.
There's always more to the story.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
And there's always more to say.
Don't ever bring that nonsense in here again.
When going too far feels closer.
Maybe I overdid it.
This space thrives on the restricted. This is the Restricted Area with Robert Guerra.
That's right. The Restricted Area back at it again with Robert Guerra. Rob G, if you're nasty, coming to you live from sunny Southern California with another edition of the Restricted Area on the eve of Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. I'm excited about it. I know you're excited about it. And rather than preview the game, because again, as I know how this thing works, y'all aren't going to consume this until either right before tip-off or right after the game's over. Instead, I'm going to share some more big picture conversation thoughts about what's going on in the Western Conference Finals, then leading in to the NBA Finals. But I'd be remiss if I did not start in a big way with what's going on with the reigning, defending, two-time NBA MVP, SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or as I'm calling him today, Shai Gil-less Alexander, because my man's game has fallen off a damn cliff. Okay. In Game 6, they had a chance to put away the Spurs, end their season, get back to the NBA Finals. What does he do? 15 points on 6 of 18 shooting, 0 of 5 from deep, 4 assists, plus minus of minus 28 in the game. That was his fewest points scored in any game this season, and his worst plus minus in over a year. And here's the problem. It wasn't just a Game 6 situation from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. This is becoming a trend, which we've seen play out not only in this series, but even going back to last year. Take a listen, all right? In this series, SGA, or excuse me, not in just series, in the postseason, SGA has a net rating of minus 18 on-off per 100 possessions. That would be the lowest on-off number by the NBA MVP in the play-by-play era. That's how bad he's been, okay? In the regular season, again, this is just context for what I'm trying to say here. SGA, 31 on 55% shooting, 38% from deep, 66% true shooting percentage. And that's always been his calling card, right? Is, as I've mentioned on previous editions of this podcast, SGA's entire aura, aside from being the free throw merchant and the unethical hooper, is that he is the most efficient, high scoring, high volume guard in NBA history. You can look it up. I've mentioned on other episodes. In this conference finals, however, his points per game goes down by 7 points. His shooting percentage is down by damn near 18%. He's shooting 38% from the field. His three-point shooting goes down by 12. He's shooting 26% from the field. And his true shooting percentage is up at 52. And the only reason that's being propped up is because, as I mentioned, the free throw merchant gets to the line and he shoots at a very high clip. In this Western Conference Finals, when the games are tougher, the competition is better, you're going against the first team during this run that can match you guys athlete for athlete. SGA has shot 40% or worse in 5 of the 6 games heading into Game 7. 7 of 23, 6 of 17, 6 of 15, 7 of 19, 6 of 18. My man is putting up tour dates, okay? Shout out Jason McIntyre, right? And here's the thing. This is not just, as I mentioned, a situation with the Spurs. This is not just a situation in this postseason. This has become a trend now for 2 straight seasons where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, not only does he not maintain his regular season status, you'd hope he'd become a playoff riser like so many other great players in NBA history. What you're seeing from SGA is that his performance, at least statistically, has fallen off a cliff now for 2 straight seasons. He gives you less in the playoffs, hence why we call him Shai Gil-less Alexander right now ahead of Game 7. But this leads me to a bigger point I wanted to make about SGA. I believe it was Nick Wright, friend of the show. Well, can't really call him a friend of the show. I've only met him twice. He's been really nice both times I've met him. And I guess because I'm really good friends with Broussard and Broussard's been on the show, maybe Nick Wright is a friend. What is it? He's cool by association, right? So we'll call him a friend of the show. But Nick Wright said something a few weeks ago. This was before Wemby really took off here in this Western Conference Finals, where he said, is SGA going to go down in history as having the shortest reign for the best player in the world? Because, once he won that once the regular season ended and Nikola Jokic was eliminated in the first round, people assumed then that he could no longer be considered the best player on the planet. SGA was about to win the second MVP. He had the best team in the league. Now the crown was his, right? That's what the narrative has been. And then like 2 weeks later, Wemby explodes and he's done even more here in this Western Conference Finals. And it's like, well, maybe SGA was the best player in the world for like 2.5, 3 weeks, right? And I'm going to say I disagree with that point by Nick Wright, but only from this standpoint. As much as I am a fan of SGA, and as much as I believe, which I said on last week's podcast, that assuming he does what he is supposed to do, because even though he has been buns in this Western Conference Final, they are still favored to win Game 7 at home. They are still favored to win the NBA championship. He is still favored to win the Finals MVP. All right. That's not me talking. That's Vegas. That's coaches. That's executives. That's players. As of now, SGA and the Thunder are still the team to beat. They are still the favorites. But it got me thinking, right? I don't believe SGA has ever been the best player in the world. Never. And it is entirely possible, as I said last week, for him to become the greatest player of this generation, greater than Jokic, greater than Giannis, greater than whoever your guy is from the last, 5 to 10 years of the NBA, because his resume could dictate as such. I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to explain here. Over the years, and again, I've worked in sports media for about 15 years on a national level. I've spoken to current players, former players, current coaches, former coaches, executives, scouts, you name it, all around the NFL. This is kind of apples and oranges, but just follow me here for a second. I've asked dozens, maybe even 100 different people who have either been in the NFL, played in the NFL, so on and so forth, right? Who do you believe is the best quarterback in NFL history? And you get a wide range of answers. But for the most part, I'd say the vast majority are either come down to one of two names. It's either Aaron Rodgers or Dan Marino. Now, there are guys here and there. You'll see some Peyton Manning sprinkled in. You'll see some John Elway sprinkled in. And that's well and fine because it's all, in the eyes of the beholder. But for the most part, everybody usually says, or the majority of people say, Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino. They say, man, the way they could throw the ball, flick of the wrist, the accuracy, the arm strength, the arm talent, off platform, on platform. Those guys are the best I've ever seen do it. You know whose name has never come up once in all of the times I've asked current, former players, coaches, executives? You know who's never come up as being the best quarterback in NFL history? Tom Brady. And yet Tom Brady is universally regarded as the greatest player, or the greatest quarterback rather, in NFL history. Why? Because his resume dictates as such. He has 7 Super Bowls. He's got MVPs. He's got a couple of all pros. All he does is win games. And therefore, nobody can be considered greater than Tom Brady. But there's a difference between the best player and the greatest player. And we're seeing that play out in real time in the NBA, going back to SGA. SGA, assuming they get things done the way that they are expected to, is going to end this season with back-to-back MVPs, back-to-back NBA championships, back-to-back finals MVP, while being the best player on statistically the most, or one of the most dominant teams in NBA history. So when you put all that down on paper as a resume, yes, he is great. Yes, he is going to go down as arguably the greatest player of his generation. And it's entirely possible that that happens and he has never once been the best player in the NBA. Just think about it, man. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. All right. Switching gears to the Eastern Conference, where my Knicks are back in the NBA Finals for the first time since 1999. They're just twiddling their thumbs, kicking their feet up, waiting for this series to end in the Western Conference to find out who's going to catch these hands from the New York Knicks, right? And depending who you talk to, the only person who is not happy to see the Knicks back in the NBA Finals is Las Vegas Aces head coach Becky Hammon. Now, you'll recall back in December of 2023, Becky Hammon raised eyebrows when she said that the Knicks or any team would never win an NBA championship with a 6'2" guy like Jalen Brunson as their team's best player. And his exact quote was, "If your best player is small, you are not winning." Well, Becky, since then, all Jalen Brunson has done is lead the Knicks to 3 straight 50-win seasons. And just for context, the Knicks had only won 45 games once in the 20 years before he arrived at MSG. And there's more. Jalen Brunson has made the second round of the playoffs every year that he's been in New York. And he's even made the finals, of course, this year. Before he arrived, the New York Knicks had only gotten out of the first round one time in the 20 years before he got there. So yes, Jalen Brunson has been objectively awesome for the New York Knicks, and he is putting on in a big way for the short kings such as myself. And I know it's kind of weird because I'm like 7 inches shorter than Jalen Brunson, but relatively, you know what I'm talking about. Well, reporters caught up to Becky Hammon earlier this week, and credit to her. Again, credit to her. She did not back down. She doubled down on her original statement. Even with the Knicks in the finals, she said, quote, "I speak from experience. Allen Iverson got the MVP and he lost in the finals. I think the 2 best teams are probably in the West, but I'm up for being proven wrong." That's the other thing. I think Jalen Brunson is a hell of a player. A hell of a player. But I'm speaking historically on the NBA with what I said. And if he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. Now, I know what you might be thinking, that when somebody disrespects the best player on my New York Knicks, that I'm going to be upset about it. Here's what I'm going to say, though. Becky Hammon's not wrong. Becky Hammon does not owe an apology to anybody. Because first of all, and I know this is semantics, but first of all, until Jalen Brunson leads my Knicks to the NBA championship, Becky Hammon's comments still hold water. She didn't say you can't make the finals with a small guard as your best player. She even mentioned Allen Iverson made the finals. She said you can't win a title with a small guard as your best player. Okay. So that's fair. That's true. But second, and most importantly, all right, the NBA today is vastly different than the NBA of 30 years ago, of 13 years ago, or 3 years ago when she initially made those comments, okay? As we've seen in these last 2 years, today's NBA is so much less about who your best player is and everything about who your worst player is, all right? The reason why the Indiana Pacers had a run to the finals and pushed OKC, that juggernaut last season, to Game 7, and probably would have won that game if Tyrese Halliburton hadn't popped his Achilles. But the reason they were able to make that kind of a run is not because Tyrese Halliburton is some superstar, because he's not. He's a very good player, but he's not a superstar. No, they made that run because every single player that they put on the floor during that postseason was at least competent, both offensively and defensively. There were no weak links that you could pick on. You say, hey, that guy's on the floor, bring him into the action, I'm going to eat his lunch. Or that guy's on the floor, we're going to leave him wide open, we're going to play 4-on-5 defensively, and we'll let him shoot because we know we can't hit a shot. They didn't have any holes like that, right? That's the reason why This current New York Knicks team is in the NBA Finals. All right. Full disclosure, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns are not great defenders. I'm not speaking out of turn. I think that's an open secret. I think anybody who knows ball even a little bit can tell you that those guys are not great defenders. But they're not terrible defenders either. At a minimum, they're willing defenders, right? They may, whatever they lack in foot speed and athleticism, they make up for in effort and smarts and knowing where to be. That kind of stuff matters. All right. Josh Hart, former Laker Josh Hart, not a great shooter by any stretch of the imagination. But again, he's not terrible either. If you leave him wide open, like the Cavs did there, I believe it was in game 2, he'll burn you. He'll hit 5 or 6 threes in the game because he's not afraid to shoot. That matters, right? Every second of every game that the New York Knicks have played, they have all 5 players who are at least solid on both ends. They're not great. They're not terrible. You know, maybe they're great at one thing. Maybe they're great at this thing, but they're not terrible at anything, right? That matters in today's NBA. These New York Knicks, my New York Knicks, are on a legendary run, not because Jalen Brunson is their best player. They're on this run because game to game, quarter to quarter, play to play, he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be. So again, if and when my New York Knicks hoist up the Larry O'Brien trophy here in about 2.5 weeks, this idea that, well, you know, Jalen Brunson proved Becky Hammond wrong, I'm gonna be like, well, did he? Or did he just have this team come together in such a way so that he didn't have to be the best player every possession? And Josh Hart, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, hell, Landry Shamet all stepped up in a big way, and they as a collective got it done. Which leads me to this. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, to give Mike Brown his flowers. Clap it up one time for former Laker Mike Brown, right? Because he has officially cemented himself as a great coach in the NBA. Not a good coach, a great coach, all right? And some of you might say, well, how can you call him great? He's never won a championship. You just said that Becky Hammond was right about Jalen Brunson because he never won a championship. Stop it. That's stupid. Here's the thing. Players are judged by rings, right? I just mentioned a few minutes ago. SGA's greatness is going to be judged by his ring count. More so than anything. Even the MVPs are nice, but the ring count is what's going to separate him from other all-time great players, even if he never has been or never will be the best player in the NBA. Players are judged by rings, not coaches. Players impact winning more than anybody because unlike the coaches, they directly affect the outcome of a game. For example, a coach can draw up the perfect play, get a wide open shot to win the game. And if the player misses, nobody cares what that play looked like because we care about the results, not the process when it comes to judging players. That's how it works. Coaches are judged by an entirely different standard. How tight are your X's and O's? How well do you motivate your team on a game-to-game, night-to-night basis? And do you maximize whatever talent level that you have on your roster? Okay. In football, just again, for comparison's sake, Kyle Shanahan does not have a Super Bowl. In fact, he has blown big leads in every fourth quarter of every Super Bowl he has coached in, either as a head coach with the Niners or as an OC with the Atlanta Falcons. All right. And yet he is universally regarded as one of the great coaches in the NFL. Why? Because his schemes are incredible. Because he's shown he can galvanize the group when half of their best players are out injured. You know, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk didn't even show up to work. Like, he found a way to make them a highly competitive team, get them to the postseason. Hell, he turned Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, into an MVP caliber quarterback. That's coaching. That is why Kyle Shanahan is regarded as one of the great coaches in the NFL. And let me tell you, getting back to the NBA, Mike Brown checks all of those same boxes. All right. Check the resume. If you don't believe me, check the resume. First, leads LeBron and the Cavs to their first ever NBA Finals appearance in 2007. Yeah, you're like, yeah, he had LeBron. Of course, anyone who has LeBron, right? But as you know, if you know ball, if you were alive back then, this was almost 20 years ago, the rest of that roster was mostly buns. No disrespect, but that's just the reality, okay? It was not just LeBron. LeBron is not the only reason why that Cavs team made that run to the finals. It's because Mike Brown's defensive schemes carried them deep into the postseason, where they said, hey, LeBron is great enough offensively where we can put the ball in his hands. He's going to make the right decisions. But defensively is where we're going to win these games. And we're going to have Sasha Pavlovich and Big Z and all these other guys. He's also Rand's Boobie Gibson play lockdown defense, and that's how we're going to win games. And so what happened that year? His peers reward him by naming him the NBA Coach of the Year. Fast forward, he's the lead assistant with the Spurs and the Warriors. Those two teams with Mike Brown on staff won a combined 4 NBA championships. In fact, most people forget that Mike Brown was the interim head coach during the legendary playoff run of 2017 with Steph, KD, and those Warriors. He went 13-0, filling in for Steve Kerr. I think he had a back issue. And the Warriors didn't even lose a game. They lost one game that postseason. And who was the head coach for the game they lost? Steve Kerr, not Mike Brown. That's how good he was for Steph, KD, Clay, so on. Later on, most recently, before he got to the Knicks, Mike Brown gets the head gig with the woeful Sacramento Kings, leads them to their first playoff berth in 17 seasons, which results in him, of course, winning Coach of the Year again, second time. Has anybody seen what's happened to the Kings since their owner panicked and dumped Mike Brown? They have not lit that damn beam once, as far as I can tell. That team sucks. That franchise is in disarray because they ignorantly thought that they could upgrade from the best coach they'd had in decades. And now, this year with the Knicks, he replaces Tibbs, who just led them to the Eastern Conference Final. So the bar at a minimum was you better get to the Final Four. And what has Mike Brown done but be a clear upgrade over Tibbs? I know I've given these stats out before, but I think it bears repeating so you fully grasp what I'm trying to convey to you here. The Knicks, back in the NBA Finals for the first time since 1999. I already mentioned that. The Knicks have won 11 straight playoff games by a combined total of 262 points, the best point differential across 11 games in NBA history, not just in the playoffs, not just in the regular season, ever. No team has ever been better across 11 games than these New York Knicks. The New York Knicks are plus 271 across the totality, 14 games of the playoffs. Each of the 7 teams behind them on that list, 17 Warriors, 87 Lakers, 71 Bucks, 96 Bulls, 86 Celtics, 01 Lakers, and the 16 Cavs, you know what they all have in common? They all won the NBA championship that season. Mike Brown has taken a very good New York's team. Again, New York Knicks team. I'm not trying to disrespect or disparage Tom Thibodeau because he's a very good coach. He made them a very good team. But what Mike Brown has done is he's turned a good team into a great team. He's tactically taken the ball out of Jalen Brunson's hands to empower guys like Karl Anthony Towns. He's gotten his best players. I mentioned it. Jalen Brunson, Karl Towns, down the list. He's gotten his best guys to willingly take lesser roles for the betterment of the group. He's helped guys like Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart to regain their confidence when both guys were in obscene slumps at various points of the year. He has maximized this New York Knicks group in a way that Tibbs, with all due respect, just could not And again, Tibbs got his team to the Eastern Conference Finals. By definition, they were one of the 4 best teams in the league. And Mike Brown has made them arguably, at least statistically, the best team in the league. So again, clap it up one time for my guy, Mike Brown. All right, that's going to do it for me. I know it's a little bit shorter than usual, but I got a big meeting with some sales bigwigs coming up here in about 6 minutes. So I got to get on up out of here. In the meantime, in between time, check out the Recliner Media YouTube page. A lot of great content, a lot of great podcasts getting put up. Check out my social media pages on X, on Instagram, at the producer RG. Until next time, peace out.